Most people misunderstand meekness as weakness. They believe being humble means diminishing yourself, making yourself small before others. But Joel Goldsmith revealed something profound that changes everything. True meekness is not about becoming less. It is about recognizing the infinite power that flows through you when ego steps aside. When you are meek and humble in heart, you become an open channel for divine consciousness. You stop resisting. You stop trying to force outcomes through personal will. Instead, you allow the infinite intelligence of spirit to work through you effortlessly. This is where miracles begin. The secret is this: meekness is the absence of self-will blocking the flow of God. When you release your need to control, manipulate, or prove yourself, you tap into a power greater than anything your human mind could manufacture. This is the hidden power Jesus spoke of when he said, "The meek shall inherit the earth." Think about water for a moment. Water is soft, yielding, humble. It never fights against obstacles. It simply flows around them, over them, through them. Yet water can carve through mountains over time. It can reshape entire landscapes. This is the power of meekness that Joel Goldsmith taught his students to embody. Your ego wants to push, force, demand, and control every situation. It believes strength comes from assertion and aggression. But spiritual power operates on a completely different principle. When you become meek in heart, you align with the natural flow of universal intelligence that already knows the perfect outcome. Humility does not mean you think less of yourself. It means you think of yourself less. You stop making everything about your personal agenda, your fears, your needs. Instead, you become aware that infinite wisdom is present right where you are, ready to guide every step when you surrender control. Joel Goldsmith discovered this truth through years of spiritual practice and healing work. He found that the moment he stopped trying to heal people through personal power, real healing occurred. When he became humble enough to know that he, of himself, could do nothing, the Christ consciousness moved through him freely. This is not passive resignation. This is active receptivity. You remain alert, present, and responsive, but you release the burden of making things happen through human effort alone. You become like a flute that allows the divine breath to create music through it. The flute does nothing but remain open. Every time you try to manipulate a situation from ego, you block the natural flow. But when you approach life with meekness, acknowledging that divine intelligence already holds the perfect solution, you step into a stream of grace that carries you forward effortlessly. This is practical mysticism at its finest. Here is the transformational practice Joel Goldsmith taught. Before any challenging situation, pause and inwardly declare, "Of myself I can do nothing. The Father within does the work." Feel the release that comes with this recognition. Your shoulders relax. Your mind quiets. Anxiety dissolves because you are no longer carrying impossible burdens. This humble acknowledgement opens a portal for divine action. You are not declaring yourself worthless. You are recognizing that your true power comes not from ego striving but from conscious alignment with infinite intelligence. You become a transparency through which spirit operates in the world. Practice this daily, especially when you feel overwhelmed or powerless. Meekness becomes your greatest strength because it connects you to the source of all power. The humble in heart do not fight life. They dance with it, guided by a wisdom far beyond human calculation. This is where true transformation begins. Sarah came to one of Joel Goldsmith's classes absolutely desperate. Her business was failing despite her working 16-hour days. She was exhausted, anxious, and on the verge of collapse. She had tried every strategy, every marketing technique, every possible human solution. Nothing worked. She felt like a complete failure. Joel looked at her with compassionate eyes and asked one simple question. Are you trying to succeed through your own power? Or are you allowing divine intelligence to work through you? Sarah broke down in tears. She realized she had been operating purely from ego, from fear, from desperate human effort. Joel taught her the practice of meekness. Every morning before work, Sarah would sit quietly and release her business entirely to spirit. She would inwardly say, "I let go of my plans. I am meek and humble in heart. I allow infinite wisdom to guide this business." It felt terrifying at first, like giving up control completely. Within 3 weeks, something shifted. Sarah stopped forcing outcomes and started listening to subtle inner guidance. An unexpected opportunity appeared through someone she had written off months earlier. A partnership formed naturally without her pushing for it. Solutions emerged that she never could have planned or predicted. 6 months later, her business had completely transformed. But more importantly, Sarah herself had transformed. She no longer carried that desperate, anxious energy. She moved through her days with quiet confidence, knowing she was being guided by something far wiser than her limited human perspective. Joel Goldsmith always emphasized this truth. Your demonstration is not about getting God to do something for you. It is about becoming humble enough to let God do something through you. Sarah learned that meekness was not weakness. It was the doorway to infinite supply, infinite creativity, infinite solutions. Another student, Michael, struggled with a difficult relationship with his adult son. Years of conflict had created a painful distance between them. Michael had tried everything to fix it: conversations, apologies, gifts, therapy. The more he tried to control the outcome, the worse things became. Joel taught him to stop trying to change his son or the situation. Instead, Michael practiced spiritual meekness every time he thought about his son. He would silently affirm, "I release this relationship to divine love. I am humble enough to know I cannot fix this through personal will. Love itself knows the way." For weeks, nothing seemed to change outwardly. But Michael noticed something shifting within himself. His anger softened. His need to be right dissolved. He stopped rehearsing old arguments in his mind. He became genuinely peaceful about the situation, even without resolution. This inner meekness created space for something new. Then one afternoon, his son called unexpectedly. The conversation was different, softer somehow. Within months, their relationship began healing in ways Michael never could have orchestrated. The healing came not from Michael's efforts, but from his willingness to step aside and let divine love work. Joel Goldsmith taught that meekness creates spiritual space for miracles. When you stop blocking the flow with ego demands and personal willpower, grace rushes in like water filling a vessel. Humility is the vessel. Divine action is the water. Together, they create transformation that human effort alone can never achieve. These are not isolated stories. Thousands of students discovered this hidden power through Joel's teachings. When you become meek and humble in heart, you inherit the earth because you align with the very power that created and sustains all things. This is your birthright waiting to be claimed. If these transformation stories inspire you, like this video to help others find these teachings, subscribe for more Joel Goldsmith wisdom, and comment. What healing journey resonated most with you? Now let me share complementary practices that deepen this meekness in your daily life. The first is what Joel called the practice of nothingness. Throughout your day, pause and recognize that of yourself, you are nothing. This sounds harsh, but it is profoundly liberating. You are not nothing in value, but nothing in personal power separate from God. When you realize you are nothing as a separate self, you simultaneously realize you are everything as an expression of divine consciousness. The separate you that worries, strives, and struggles is an illusion. The real you is the very presence of God appearing as your individual being. Meekness is recognizing this truth constantly. Practice this especially before important decisions or conversations. Instead of planning what you will say or do, become inwardly still and humble. Acknowledge you do not know the perfect response, but infinite wisdom within you does. Then speak and act from that humble receptivity rather than calculated personal strategy. The second practice Joel taught is making yourself available to be used. Each morning, instead of creating your agenda for God to bless, offer yourself as an instrument for divine purposes. Pray simply, "Here I am. Use me today as you will. I am meek and open to your guidance in all things." This transforms your entire approach to life. You stop demanding that circumstances conform to your preferences. Instead, you watch for opportunities to serve, to express love, to bring light wherever you are placed. You become like clay in the potter's hands, willing to be shaped for purposes beyond your understanding. When challenges arise during your day, return to this humble posture. Ask inwardly, "How can I be used in this situation? What would love do here?" This question bypasses ego entirely and connects you directly to divine wisdom. Answers come not as dramatic revelations, but as gentle inner knowing that guides your next step. The third complementary practice is what Joel called releasing the judgment mind. Ego constantly judges everything as good or bad, right or wrong, based on limited human perception. But meekness recognizes that divine intelligence operates beyond these dualistic judgments. What appears as problem may be doorway. What seems like failure may be redirection. Practice suspending judgment about your circumstances, especially challenging ones. Instead of immediately labeling something as disaster or blessing, remain humble and open. Inwardly affirm, I do not know what this means. I am meek enough to trust that infinite wisdom is unfolding something perfect here. This does not mean accepting genuine harm passively. It means not adding layers of mental suffering and resistance to situations through premature judgment. When you remain humble and open, you often discover that what seemed like obstacle was actually opportunity disguised. Your meekness allows you to see with spiritual vision rather than limited ego perception. Finally, practice what Joel called the art of inner listening. Meekness is quiet receptivity. Several times daily, stop all outer activity and inner mental chatter. Sit in humble silence, not trying to achieve anything or receive anything specific. Simply be available, like a servant waiting for instruction. In this humble listening, you may receive clear guidance, or you may receive only peace. Both are valuable. The practice itself develops your capacity for meekness. You train yourself to stop and release control regularly throughout your day. This becomes your spiritual rhythm. Action followed by humble receptivity. Speaking followed by listening. Joel emphasized that these practices work together to create a meek and humble heart. You are not trying to become weak or passive. You are becoming so spiritually powerful that you no longer need ego defenses, manipulation, or control. You trust the infinite intelligence flowing through you when you humbly step aside and allow it. But let me be honest about the challenges you will face practicing meekness. The first major obstacle is that your ego will interpret humility as dangerous vulnerability. Every instinct of self-preservation will scream that you must control, defend, and assert yourself, or you will be destroyed, overlooked, or taken advantage of. This fear is normal and understandable. We have been conditioned to believe that aggressive self-promotion and constant vigilance are necessary for survival. The idea of releasing control feels like stepping off a cliff blindfolded. Your mind will create countless scenarios of disaster that could occur if you stop managing everything. Joel acknowledged this fear in his students repeatedly. He taught them to recognize it as the death throes of ego, not as valid spiritual guidance. The ego will always resist meekness because meekness dissolves ego. But here is what Joel promised. On the other side of that fear is a peace and power you cannot imagine while still clutching control. The second challenge is that meekness sometimes produces uncomfortable outer changes before inner peace manifests. When you stop forcing outcomes, situations you were desperately holding together through willpower may appear to fall apart temporarily. Relationships built on ego dynamics may shift or end. Career paths driven by pride may require redirection. This is not failure. This is clearing. Joel called it the purification process. When you genuinely become humble, whatever was sustained purely by ego effort naturally dissolves, making space for what can be sustained by spiritual alignment. This transition period can feel destabilizing and scary. During this phase, you may doubt whether meekness really works. You may be tempted to grab back control and return to old patterns. Joel counseled students to persist through this challenging middle ground. Keep practicing humility even when circumstances look worse. Trust that divine intelligence is rearranging your life into true alignment. The third obstacle is subtle spiritual pride about your humility. This sounds paradoxical, but it happens frequently. You begin practicing meekness and notice some positive results. Then ego sneaks back in through the back door thinking, look how spiritually humble I am. I am more advanced than others who still operate from ego. The moment you feel superior because of your humility, you have lost true meekness. Joel warned against this trap constantly. Real humility never compares itself to others. It never congratulates itself for being humble. It simply remains quietly receptive to divine guidance, making no claims about spiritual attainment or advancement. Watch for this, particularly when you are teaching these principles to others or discussing your spiritual practice. If you notice yourself feeling even slightly superior, immediately return to the foundational recognition. Of myself, I am nothing. All apparent spiritual progress is grace working through me, not personal achievement to claim credit for. Here is how to work with these obstacles practically. When fear of vulnerability arises, acknowledge it compassionately. Say to yourself, "This fear is natural, but it is not truth. I am safe in the arms of infinite love. My security comes not from ego control, but from divine presence." When outer circumstances seem to worsen, return daily to your practice of releasing everything to Spirit. Journal about what you are learning during this transition. Often the most profound growth happens in these uncomfortable periods. Trust the process even when you cannot see the outcome yet. When spiritual pride creeps in, laugh at yourself gently and immediately return to humility. Recognize that ego is clever and can co-opt even spiritual practices. The antidote is always the same. Acknowledge that of yourself you can do nothing, and all power comes from your alignment with infinite intelligence. If these challenge-breaking techniques speak to your heart, like to support this content, subscribe for advanced spiritual practices, and comment, which obstacle are you ready to transform now? Let me show you how meekness operates in advanced daily situations. Consider a business negotiation where significant money is at stake. Your natural inclination is to plan every argument, anticipate objections, and strategize how to get what you want. This is pure ego operation, and it often creates tense, adversarial interactions. Instead, practice meekness before the meeting. Release all attachment to specific outcomes. Inwardly acknowledge that infinite intelligence knows the perfect solution for all parties involved. Enter the negotiation not as adversary, but as humble participant in a process guided by wisdom greater than any individual agenda. Something remarkable happens when you bring this consciousness into practical situations. The atmosphere shifts. Other people unconsciously respond to your non-defensive, open energy. Creative solutions emerge that serve everyone better than the limited outcomes you originally planned. Divine intelligence truly does know better than ego calculation. Consider parenting from Meek consciousness. Most parents operate from fear-based control, trying to force children into predetermined paths we believe are best. We lecture, manipulate, and pressure because we think our limited human perspective knows what our children need for happiness and success. Joel taught a revolutionary approach. Practice spiritual humility with your children. Recognize that divine intelligence lives in them just as it lives in you. Your role is not to control their journey, but to support their unfolding according to their own inner guidance. Release your attachment to how their life should look. This does not mean abandoning appropriate boundaries or guidance. It means bringing humble receptivity to parenting rather than ego-driven control. Before important conversations with your child, practice meekness. Ask inwardly, what does love want to express through me right now? Then speak from that humble listening rather than fear-based lecturing. Apply meekness to creative work and professional projects. So many artists, writers, and professionals struggle with creative blocks because they operate from ego pressure. They demand that their work be brilliant, successful, and recognized. This creates paralyzing anxiety and kills authentic creative flow. Joel would say, approach your work with humble openness. Recognize that you are not the source of creativity, but the channel through which it flows. Before you write, paint, design, or create anything, become inwardly meek. Release attachment to outcomes. Allow creative intelligence to work through you without ego interference or judgment. When you create from this humble space, your work carries different energy. It becomes authentic expression rather than calculated performance. It serves others naturally because it flows from source rather than ego need for approval. Many of Joel's students discovered that their most impactful work emerged when they stopped trying to be impressive and simply became available. Even in conflict resolution, meekness is your hidden power. When someone attacks you verbally or treats you unfairly, ego wants to defend, counterattack, or prove yourself right. This escalates conflict and creates suffering for everyone involved, including yourself. Practice meekness in these difficult moments. Inwardly release the need to defend your position or change the other person's perception. Recognize that you do not need to prove anything because your value comes from divine source, not human opinion. Respond with quiet dignity rather than ego defensiveness. Joel taught that meekness does not mean accepting abuse. It means responding from spiritual strength rather than ego weakness. Sometimes meek response is firm boundary. Sometimes it is compassionate silence. Sometimes it is walking away with inner peace intact. Humility gives you freedom to respond wisely rather than react from wounded pride. Now let me share the ultimate truth Joel Goldsmith revealed about meekness. When Jesus said the meek shall inherit the earth, he was not promising future reward for present suffering. He was revealing a spiritual law that operates now, in this moment, in your current experience. To inherit the earth means to possess dominion over your experience through alignment with divine consciousness. The meek inherit this dominion because they stop fighting reality with ego resistance. They flow with divine intelligence instead of struggling against it. This surrender is not defeat. It is the doorway to true power. Every master, mystic, and spiritual teacher throughout history discovered this same truth. Personal will creates struggle and limitation. Humble alignment with infinite intelligence creates miracles. The question is never whether this principle works. The question is only whether you will practice it consistently until it becomes your natural state of being. Imagine living your entire life from this consciousness of meekness. You wake each morning not with anxiety about your to-do list, but with humble availability to be guided through your day. You face challenges not with fear about outcomes, but with quiet confidence that wisdom within you knows the perfect response. Your relationships transform because you stop trying to control others or prove yourself. You listen deeply because you are not planning your defense or waiting to speak. You love freely because you have nothing to protect or defend. Your work becomes effortless expression of divine creativity rather than exhausting ego performance. This is not fantasy or spiritual theory. This is practical reality available to anyone willing to practice genuine meekness consistently. Joel Goldsmith lived this way for decades and taught thousands of students to do the same. The hidden power in being meek and humble in heart is simply this: you become a clear channel for infinite intelligence. The transformation happens gradually through faithful practice. You will have days where meekness feels natural and effortless. You will have days where ego roars back and you find yourself clutching control again. Both are part of the journey. Each time you recognize ego operation and return to humility, you strengthen spiritual muscle. Be patient and compassionate with yourself during this transformation. You are unlearning decades of conditioning that taught you to survive through ego striving. You are learning to trust an invisible intelligence that operates beyond logic and calculation. This requires courage, not weakness. Humility is the bravest choice you will ever make. Joel promised his students that persistent practice of meekness would eventually become their natural state. The day comes when you no longer have to remind yourself to release control, because surrender has become automatic. You live in continuous flow of divine guidance, responsive to inner wisdom in every moment. So here is your invitation into transformed life through meekness. Starting today, practice the simple recognition Joel taught. Of myself I can do nothing, but the Father within does all things. Carry this humble awareness into every situation, every decision, every relationship, every challenge. Watch what happens when you stop fighting life and start flowing with divine intelligence. Observe how solutions appear without your forcing them. Notice how peace replaces anxiety when you release outcomes. Experience how power flows through you when you stop blocking it with ego control. The hidden power in being meek and humble in heart is not hidden at all once you practice it. It becomes the most obvious truth of your existence. You are not separate, struggling individuals trying to survive in a hostile universe. You are expressions of infinite consciousness, powerful beyond measure when you humbly allow that power to flow through you. If your spiritual understanding expanded through these Joel Goldsmith secrets, like this video, subscribe for more transformative teachings, and comment, "I am transformed," to confirm your new path.